For years, Tennessee's agricultural industry has been one of the primary driving forces behind the state's economy. Agricultural production alone, excluding forest products, normally generates over $2 billion annually in farm cash receipts. And to get the job done, farmers are heavily dependent on a hired labor force, and that usually means migrant workers. The purpose of this video is to show and demonstrate the proper housing requirements for these workers as required from the U.S. Department of Labor.
We hope that by showing actual housing and by typical investigation techniques that we would use, that we will be able to create a tool that will be helpful in showing farmers, farm labor contractors, or housing providers how to comply with the housing health and safety standards.
And those standards are required by law for anyone that houses migrant or H2A workers. And whether the housing is in a trailer, an existing home, or barracks type of structure, the requirements remain the same. And no matter how long the workers stay, the farmer is responsible to maintain those facilities under the current guidelines. This is true even if all the farmer does is permit workers to stay in vacant housing or trailers on their property.
Typically, we come along 3 months or 6 weeks or 8 weeks after the farmer has put his people out there in the housing, and we find that the farmer's never been into the housing since he put the workers in there. And one of the things that I encourage farmers do is to periodically go out and look at the housing.
Bob Woodward is an investigator with the Department of Labor, and he's seen both good and bad housing provided for migrant workers, and he takes us through the inspection process that farmers can expect when the Department of Labor makes a visit.
The entrance to the house must have self-closing screen doors, so obviously we need to check and make sure that the doors are self-closing, so no problem with this. First thing we look for when we come into the housing is to see if the required posters have been posted. All housing provided by farmers for their migrant or H2A workers is required to be pre-certified before the workers move into the facility. The farmer must also post the terms and conditions of living in the housing, and this must be posted and available, and it's one of the things that we check for when we come in. When the house is pre-certified, it gives a period of time that shows when that housing is authorized to be used by the workers, and it shows the expiration date. It also shows the number of occupants that are permitted. When checking housing, basically each worker is entitled to 50 square feet of sleeping space for themselves. So when we come into an establishment, one of the first things we're going to do is to check to verify that the workers have the square feet. This particular room is 10 feet wide. By 12 feet. 10 feet by 12 feet is 120 square feet, so we know that this room is in compliance as far as providing the proper space for the workers. 2 beds, 2 workers, they have 60 square feet apiece for their room. Beds must be at least 12 inches off the floor. Rooms are required to be 7 feet high. Next thing we do is check the size of the window. 3 feet by 4 feet, so that's 12 square feet. Have to be enough window space in the room to equal 10% of the floor space. So 3 by 4 is 12 square feet of window space. This room is in compliance. Each worker is entitled to some place to store their clothing. So each room that we look at, we check to see whether or not they have either locker space or some place where they can set their clothes and hang their clothes. Light fixtures must be working. Smoke alarms are required according to local codes. When we go into a bathing facility, we enter. We get a visual. We want to make sure that all the lights are working. There's no broken light bulbs. We check to make sure that the water is hot and cold. Typically, if we find problems in bathing facilities, one of the most common problems we find is water leaks underneath the sinks. So we always have to check just to verify that they're in good shape. This facility is in excellent shape. No leakages. Required to have at least 3 toilets in a house this size. They have a urinal and 3 toilets. Toilets are maintained in a clean and sanitary condition with an adequate supply of toilet paper. Flushes. Laundry, hand washing, and bathing facilities are required to be provided for the workers. What we have here is we have 3 shower stalls. Same thing, we check to make sure that the water is hot and cold. The OSHA housing requirements require that there be laundry facilities provided, or they must provide them access with some place to go or take them to have their laundry done. This facility has both a washer and a dryer, has hanging space, and meets all the requirements. Bathrooms must have either 6 square feet of window opening to the outside or have adequate ventilation by fan. Okay, when checking a kitchen facility, what you need to look for are common problems. There should be a garbage can with a lid. All the stove eyes should be working. One of the most common problems we find in checking electrical stoves is that because of the method of cooking, most of the cooking is done directly on the eyes, and those things burn out very quickly. So it's very common to come into any kind of housing and find stove eyes burned out. Each stove must have a backing to it that is fireproof according to local code. Kitchen must be clean and free of vermin. We always look to make sure that there's no rotting food or insects present. Always, again, check underneath sinks to verify that there's no leaks. Must have at least 1 light, ceiling light, which obviously does work. All equipment and utensils must be clean. This house is on city water, but any housing using well water must have the water certified by local authorities as safe for drinking before the workers move in. If we find a kitchen in dirty or unsanitary condition where the workers have not cleaned it up, that's obviously going to become a violation. Local codes typically require some type of fire prevention equipment, such as smoke alarms or having a fire extinguisher available. All housing must have first aid supplies available in adequate amount, and this appears to be fine. Garbage cans must be up off the ground, must have lids that are tight and secure. Some of the most common problems that we find are torn screens and broken windows. As you can see, this house provides sound shelter. The roofing, walls, and foundation are all in good repair. Stairs are required as necessary in all housing. In cold weather, the housing must have adequate heating provided. This site is graded and free of depressions that would lead to standing water. It is free from trash, garbage, abandoned appliances, vehicles, and furniture. There is no leaking sewage present. There's no standing water and no livestock within 500 feet of the housing. Every farm we check, every farm housing we check is different. You know, there are some consistent problem areas. Typically what happens when a farmer puts workers in his housing, he never goes out to the house. So one of the best advice that I can give to farmers is that what you need to do is every week you have a payday, and every week in reality you need to go out there and check your housing and make sure that it meets the standards that you're obligated to comply with.
I think the health and safety standards are very achievable. There always may be minor problems, but most of the requirements are basic, common sense requirements for any safe and healthful housing and clean housing. And each year before migrants or H2A workers actually move into housing, the housing is required to be certified as meeting the health and safety standards for the number of occupants that are going to be in the housing.